Hey there, submarine fans. This is Eric from the subvet.com. Welcome, submarine fans. This is Eric with the subvet.com, and I'm joined today by Jesse Chaney, who is now official member of the subvet. He'll be contributing with it on this TSV podcast series, in-depth TSV podcast series number 2. We're going to be talking about the recent downing of, well, is it a research submarine, Jesse, or it's OceanGate, and it's what's classified as a tourist or a research?
I think they fund themselves for these expeditions by some billionaire tourists that want to go out and be mission specialists, and so they plop down a huge sum of money to help fund this expedition that is also a research mission.
So there's I've already linked on our social media a great thing that Aaron did over there, sub brief, talking about how this thing is built. It's built out of fiberglass and a titanium. The fiberglass, composite fiberglass, is interesting. So there is 5 people right now missing. Apparently they're bolted into this thing, so they're either on the bottom, which in that case are probably dead, or they're bobbing on the surface somewhere and running out of air. But rather than going in, since we don't know a lot about it, and we know there's the Coast Guard and we have assets out there, and we're going to go over some of that today too, what some of the responses that we have found in the news already that we have sent out. But I also got an expert because Jesse was a part of Submarine Squadron 11, and I also have a former Master Chief retired Geoffrey Walker with this. So say hello out there to all the TSV fans, submarine fans out there, Jeff.
Aloha, folks.
Hello. So there he is, and he was also part of the submarine rescue. So that's called Commander Submarine Squadron 11, which is for the Pacific side, and they're out of, where would they be, out of Guam, San Diego?
So, yeah, URC is what it's called now, Undersea Rescue Command.
Undersea Rescue Command.
And when I was there, it was called DSU, for Deep Submergence Unit, and they're actually based out of Coronado. So they're across from the submarine base there, but they're out of Coronado, so that way they have the ability to fly away at a moment's notice.
Okay, and then we have the similar capability on the Atlantic side, I'm assuming, or would that rescue command do both?
It's both, yeah.
So it's both. So what we're going to be discussing more today is, obviously what assistance we might be providing them at, to try to find these 5 tourists, I guess it would say, or 5 research scientists. And like you said, it was a billionaires club, Jesse, if you will. And then, but I wanted to go more into, well, and not too long, talking about what our capabilities is, if it was a NATO type submarine or a US submarine or somebody that was allied with us, and what our rescue response would be for that. Some of the things we used in the past, maybe some historical items, and we'll go from there. So, Jesse, can you go into a little bit about Seagate and just, give us some of the basics, what you know so far?
So OceanGate is a crude submersible that they do for charter and scientific exploration. They do both, like I said, they do commercial projects, scientific, and just general exploration and going into different canyons. They offer expeditions such as the Titanic survey, where again, you get to pay $250,000. You get certified as a team member. You get trapped in this 21-foot tube it's been reported controlled by a wireless PlayStation controller, and drive around at 13,000 feet underwater, which is what, about 6,000 psi.
So yeah, we're starting to learn more how that thing is constructed. Like I said, Aaron with Seabrief did a great thing on that, already discussing that. And then, so we got like I said, we got 5 people out there, and so we're going to go into some of the capabilities of what they're providing right now. So right now we do know the Coast Guard's out there, and also we had an article where they said that they put out a flyaway. So what would be in this flyaway the U.S. Navy is providing to help out with the search attempts, Jeff?
Yeah, so flyaway, as far as like what assistance they can actually render, it's probably going to be, I mean, if they were to do anything, I would think it would just be like an advisory capacity, just because all the assets that we have either don't have a working depth that's anywhere near what you would need. I think the working depth of the ROVs that URC uses now, so remotely operated vehicles, they're just like the little robot submarines, with a couple of appendages on the front, a couple arms for manipulation, minor things. Those have a working depth, I believe, of 2,000 feet now. The PRM has a working depth of 2,000 feet, and the SRC has a working depth of 850 feet. So with those assets, you kind of got to realize that like the thought with the design and the working capacity of them is that if a submarine is, a naval asset submarine is below 2,000 feet, it's pretty much assumed that it's already been crushed. So there's no sense in having the ability to get people off of something with a capability that goes deeper than 2,000 feet. The other thing you have to consider is that those assets between the SRC and the PRM require like a mating surface, which is like all submarines basically on their escape hatches have a fairing that goes around it. I don't know if you guys remember that from your time inside of the Navy or not, but the escape hatches have the ability for those assets to come down, and it's basically like a giant gasket that they're actually able to use. They use a combination of the sea pressure and they pump it out. So it's basically like a gasket that they create a suction on, and then anchor it to it. Something like this isn't going to have that capability. I mean, you need a big ass fairing to hook it up to, and both the SRC and the PRM need that.
And absolutely, so we need to go into how deep this thing. So this submarine is going down to the Titanic, and the Titanic is down. Jesse looked that up. It's around 12,500 to 13,000 something feet down there.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, and how many times were you able to pick up? How many times have they gone down and brought people down there?
A total of 7 times previous expeditions, down to the Titanic. Now, like Jeff was saying, there's no mating surface. They're bolted in with 17 bolts, and all submarine hatches. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, are designed to be the same within the submarine rescue, like between a Type 209 to everything else, for us all to be able to mate in general, isn't it?
I don't think it's like a NATO standard, but I think it's just kind of, so I think it's worth mentioning too that like when we talk about like the gentleman's game that is submarining. So if you go to there's a website called ismerlo.org, which is India, Sierra, Mike, Echo, Romeo, Lima, Oscar.org. And it actually has a list of the different countries that have rescue assets. And those are going to vary. They may be some sort of thing like our PRM. It might be ROVs. It might be a rescue chamber of some sort. But Russia's on that list too, and they're not a NATO country. So I don't know if there's like a standardization that exists there. I think it's just kind of like best practice to have that bearing surface. So,
and I'm kind of showing that website right now. I mean, it does show the different countries. You can click on the country's flag and it gives you some of the capabilities they have to add into rescuing. So, yeah. So what we're trying to establish here is that, if they're underwater, they're most likely beyond anything that we have the capability, or any country has the capability of rescuing them if they were alive. Now, far as finding, if we could find this submarine, which that's going to be incredibly different, and it's a big blue ocean out there, it's really deep. You got undersea currents, which could drag it away because it wasn't tethered, right, Jesse, at all?
No, it's a self-propelled. They have 4 electric motors that they use to be able to navigate that on down. And they also have supposedly 7 different ways, like tertiary ways to be able to do an emergency blow, essentially. They're able to drop buoyancy and all these things, which leads
Drops
to the
weights
thought,
off the bottom of it, right? So
right.
they
So that
carry
leads
like the
to
weight and drop and go to the surface.
leads to the thought that something catastrophic happened, and this isn't going to be a rescue mission. It's more of a search mission. And the fact that most of the ROVs doesn't even have the lifting capability to lift up the 21,000 pounds that this thing weighs to even lift it back up.
So my thought on this is they're looking for them bobbing on the surface. That's why you got the Coast Guard involved. We got planes up there that are looking around. I know they have dropped some sonar buoys that we have found out in the news. But the main thing is the optimal thing is to find them on the surface. They're still built it in, and they only have so much oxygen left. And then,
let's talk. Can I bring up something else?
Right.
The paint. I don't understand why they decided that they want to paint this submersible white. Why not orange?
Right. Yeah. I mean, these are
Like
kind
the
of
color of a life raft. Yeah.
Right.
You want to paint something that you could possibly recover. And you know what? And that's going to be like an after discussion. What would be a better design for somebody?
Well,
people really want to do this, but they signed like what is their death certificate. So we saw, what's the guy? It was a guy from CBS. I think maybe it was a morning show, and
right.
he showed, he read out loud what it was. It said, this is what's going to happen to potentially could happen to you.
It's not a certified vessel by the Coast Guard. It's strictly a research and test vehicle that they've used to do this with, which is bad practice. And a matter of fact, one of the 5 members is the CEO of OceanGate that's down there. So I don't know if there's much of a company left after this.
Right. Yeah. So they're probably done. Probably going to be lawsuits, even though they sign in there that you can't sue them. But they're going to sue anyways, and we've kind of talked about that before you even came on today. But let's go. I wanted to go more with the most recent submarine accident. Maybe let's just discuss what we can do, because I want people to know that we do have some capabilities, and we're pretty good at it. There's been even way back before World War II, we had the USS Squalus. We were able to rescue that, and that was a what is called, that SRC is what that was called, Jeff?
Yeah, it was. I think they just called it like a diving bell at the time. It didn't have
submerged rescue chambers. What they got now, but so it was like a diving bell, and they were successfully able to raise them. Anybody remember how many feet? It was not that deep.
It was around 240. Yeah, it's like
240 feet. Yeah, and back before World War II, I mean, that was just a crazy thing. They were even to be able to do that, and that was a good day for those guys. They were able to get out. They weren't able to get everybody out, but they got some people out of one end of the submarine, I think is what it was. But the most recent accident we had was with this. I'm going to say it wrong, like the Karka class submarine.
So the most recent one was the Indonesian KRI Nagala. And that was lost in the Indonesian Sea. And then I know from personal experience, Jeff and I was both stationed at Submarine Squadron 11 when the Argentinian submarine San Juan was lost. So that would be the most.
Yeah, we had 2 recently. The Argentinian one, I forgot about that one too. But so what we went into, and you guys can discuss some of the capabilities we had that, but we found the submarines, and then it goes into a recovery operation,
right
at that point.
So I think Jeff probably a little bit more in depth on this, but there's steps that goes into activating ISMERLO or a submarine response. That you have to copy your broadcast. And was it first? You have the submiss notice.
Yeah, it's like I forget. I think it does go from like submiss, and there's like a different scale of it. I don't want to speak
right near to it
on. I know that URC basically turns into a big command center at that point, when that goes into effect there. And they've done exercise with it and stuff, and obviously.
So they start flying the equipment on station, and like we said from ISMERLO, if I said it right, other countries would be bringing out their hardware as well. So we have three types. We had the submerged rescue chamber, and I don't think we have the Mystic anymore, Jeff.
Yeah, the Mystic was replaced by the PRM, the pressurized rescue module. So
right. yeah, if you can discuss some of the pressurized rescue module and how
Sure.
that might work.
Real quick too, what you're talking about as far as like everyone's spinning up, a lot of it's going to come down to who's geographically closer. Not just like, competency or stuff like that, but it's just, what asset can get on hand first is going to be like the primary asset. Then it depends, on like whether or not it's operational, if it's in some sort of maintenance, at some point in time, they do have to do maintenance periods and all that stuff. So something might be down for one country that might be closer. So there's a lot of calculus that goes into like, what's going to be there, but basically everybody's going to, offer assistance with it because, it's kind of like what's rule number one of being on a submarine? Don't die on a submarine.
Right.
So
Keep
it's kind of funny too. Like whenever anything like this happens, like in the news, I think like if you like talk to like your average normal person, it's like one of like, the ways that nobody wants to die. It's like when a coal mine collapses or whatever. It's like, oh my God, we've got to get the miners out of there. Because nobody wants to die in a cave or in a submarine. So that's kind of like why the Russians and the Chinese, like if we were to lose a submarine, they'd be knocking at the door trying to help us, because it's a universal, thing that we don't want to have people die in these things.
Well, I think we're all on different sides, but we all have, we all do the same mission. We all accept the same risk, and we all understand, that's
100%.
something inherently that, like I said, it's a gentleman's agreement.
I've always said that like, if you were to pull in a submarine of North Korean sailors and, Iranian sailors and Chinese sailors and US sailors and British sailors, like we'd all party and, have a great time together because we all hate cleaning. We all hate the cob, it's like, that stuff is universal, and we're all.
What's the unclassified depth we can get? Like if you're beyond this depth, there's no asset that they're going to get any people out.
Like I said, they don't design these things. So the working depth of the PRM is 2,000 feet. So
there you go. That kind of says it all.
I mean, and that's kind of one of those things in like the design of the submarine is, there's no difference between going 5 feet over test depth and 1,000 feet over test depth. You're in a completely unknown at that point. So that's why it's such a big deal to violate, your depth that you're allowed to go to. Because they don't know if crush depth is, X plus 10 feet or X plus 1,000 feet. That's why you just don't even do it.
That's what I say. It's more a recovery thing. Optimally, it'd be cool if you could find a bobbin on the surface and you get there in time so you can get them out so they can breathe because oxygen is running out. But it's going to be recovery if trying to find it, using side scan sonar type assets. ROV.
That would be the main thing that they would use would be side scan. And again, it's kind of like, like when there's examples that you could use as far as talking about currents and stuff. I mean, that's why those two sections of the Titanic are, I don't know how far apart they are, but they're a half mile apart or whatever. Or like when a plane crash happens, that like the debris field is just massive. And it gets exponentially worse when you're dealing with like square miles,
What was the history and how they found the Titanic was found because we were doing things for the Cold War. Obviously, it wasn't Dr. Ballard that ran it.
It was Ballard, I think, in '85 found it.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
So so it was still we were doing some Cold War super spy stuff, and I know they ran into Dr. Ballard. He's really famous, and we'll put some more information up about him, about what how he found it, and other things that he did for the Navy because he was heavily involved with our research program since like the 60s. I think it goes way back.
Yeah, to kind of answer your question though, like what the ROVs are actually for is for like the salvage side of it. So theoretically, what you could do with an ROV is you have the ability to send it down with a steel braided cable and a shackle and get it to something. That's something that we did at URC all the time as we got called for was deep ocean salvage, where if a test missile got lost or something, provided it was within the working depth of the ROV and you had enough cable on a spool, you could send the ROV down with the claw holding the shackle. Those claws have enough dexterity to do something like use a lifting shackle. So, you have the ability to hook it up underneath something, put the bolt inside of it and then say good to go. And then you can pull it up from the surface asset. In a situation like this, though, I mean, this whole 12,000
what are you going to
feet
do? As I say, because a lot of people are like, well, the Navy can get out there and the Navy can do all this. And I mean, the Navy has a lot of capabilities, but in this situation, these guys knew what they were getting into before it happened. And being not certified with the Coast Guard and like that really kind of says it all, from the beginning. But I wanted to go into 209 real quick. How many days did it take to find that Indonesian submarine?
It took a couple months after, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, I believe it took a while.
Yeah, just because of, like we said, that area of uncertainty that exists, where it's like it could be anywhere from here to here. It's like why they never found what's the Indonesian plane?
The Malaysian plane.
MH270. Yeah, the Malaysian. Yeah, MH270 or whatever. Like, because if you're dealing with an area of uncertainty that's that large, and then you factor in currents and depth and the speed that it was going at the impact of it, I mean, there's just so much, so many variables that exist.
Right. It just exponentially grows, from the last known when they dive and said we're diving to we haven't heard contact for 6, 8, 10 hours. It grows and grows and grows. And so I think you're right. I think that took about a month for them to actually find the wreckage remains of it.
And then they just got a camera on it, right? They just got ROV down there first, and they were that clamp you were talking about, Jeff, too. They were kind of clawing around in it, but that was multiple countries working on that, or was that U.S. Navy assets it was on?
I'm sure there was a lot of people working on it.
Right.
Yeah, it was a multi-nation effort, and then we had. Yeah, go ahead.
So Jeff also has experience with the Russian deep submergence vehicle that was stuck. He got stuck in trawling wire fishing line in 2005.
That's the Russian story. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that was a successful one. So let's go. How deep was that? I mean, they were pretty deep.
I don't remember, honestly, but it wasn't that deep because it was off the coast of Qatar, and they were farting around with some of their own stuff.
And it took them a while to find it, and then they had to get them out of those cables to get them. But that was actually a successful story.
The Brits were able to use their ROV to get the cables off of them enough so that they were able to surface. So,
and honestly, that took a lot for the Russians, because in 2000, when the Kursk went down, they refused all offers.
That was the lesson that came out, because it's like, after the Kursk went down, and they had like that whole thing of like the wives screaming at Putin and the Dealey Center or whatever.
Right.
And everybody was standing by there too. What country was it? Was it Norway? We had a lot of
Norway had the saturation divers ready to go, because the Kursk was only in 200 feet of water. You could have
shallow.
You could have lifted the Kursk up and gotten the escape hatch out of the water.
You could have sent a diver down on a nitrox in a wetsuit to get down there to them.
Yeah.
And that turns out they were testing some of their newer capabilities, and it was a torpedo, and so that goes. So obviously, that was a hot situation because they didn't want to share classified information. That's why they weren't asking for help. So that's another variable that comes into when we get into these type of searches. What are you going to reveal to your potential enemy, or even a friend to me, if I guess as you can call it too, everybody's supposed to be getting along, but we know in today's culture with Russia and Ukraine war, that's not the case. So if something like that happened again, it'd probably be the same thing. They would be like the Black Sea, that'd be a hot situation if something went down in the Black Sea.
So I think too, something to consider is if it's in shallow water, they'll get it back.
Yeah.
They got an Oscar II submarine back. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then in the Cold War too, remember the Glomar Explorer, that whole thing?
Was that with the Howard Hughes with?
That was where they. I'm not sure of the depth of that, but I mean there was a significant effort put into it.
Oh yeah.
But even then, that wasn't in 13,000.
Yeah, that was they were trying to recover the nuclear weapons that was on board in the sail on that.
Correct.
And they got a chunk of it, and that was classified until after the Cold War.
Yeah.
They did a funeral with it and all that kind of stuff. And
they ain't brought up the Scorpion or the Thresher because they were in a similar situation as far as the depth. So it's the capability exists to get it, they'll get it. But like I said, I just think they're so deep that
there's numerous, I think, what do we monitor? The Scorpion. We send down an ROV occasionally to check for radiation exposure. The same thing with the Mike. When it went down with the Russians, they go down and say, hey, there's nuclear tipped warheads on here. Is the reactor safe? All these different factors that go into it. And do we need to get it?
Yeah, there's a lot that has to go into recovering a modern day submarine, obviously, and based on radiation reactor or weapons on the bottom and stuff like that. And there's still stuff on the bottom today, and I know they roll something by to check the reactor of the Scorpion down there, right? I think they had a recent one where they were just monitoring the radiation down there as well.
It's probably something they do yearly.
Yeah, I thought that was remember back in the day with like the NR1 and stuff. I thought that was like part of like their skill set, was checking things like that out. But we don't have a capability like that anymore,
No.
Right. So
I
just went. So yeah, this was just getting some guys together. I was really glad we can get a couple fast tech sonar guys in here and just talk over some of the basics of because people get up, obviously this is being played up big time in the media. People missing on a submarine that makes headlines and big headlines. So people are like, where's the Navy? Well, the Navy has a lot of capabilities, but in this situation, I'm sure the Navy and the Coast Guard are doing everything they can, and not just us, but it's a multi-nation effort as well. So I appreciate you guys being with me today, and that'll be it for this podcast. And so you can come over to see us at thesubvet.com. You can join our Facebook group at Facebook/thesubvet or Facebook/group/thesubvet, or our Twitter feed, Twitter/thesubvet, and you can keep updated on all the daily news within the submarine world. I post them out there daily or semi-daily as they come available, and I'll try to stay on top of this situation with that. And if we get into some conversations, or we can find some people to talk more about what's going on with the OceanGate here, we're going to do that too. We'll try to get you some more information, and we'll have further podcasts as we go forward. So please hit the subscription and like this YouTube video. That'll help with the the algorithm on YouTube. Everybody says that all the time. And that'll be it. This is Eric with thesubvet.com, and you have a fine Navy day.